grab your coffee and get cozy because you are listening to Fika with Vicky, live from home.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Fika, live from home, with our returning guest today, author Quin, and me, your host, Vicky Bennison. I first decided that Halo was someone I wanted to hear more from. Reading her title, Pagan Portals, Folktales, Fairies, and Spirits, page 5 to be exact. When after suggesting to people that they write their own ideas along with hers in the book, and realizing that some people might find that difficult, writing in books and all, she said, and I quote, and because I love it, she said, "If I may be a little provocative in my framing, contemplate why it is that what I've written in this book might hold more weight to you than your own thoughts." And my own thoughts were, oh, I like her. In a world where being provocative has become linked to the intentional inciting of people to fear and anger, Halo has used it to arouse us, sharing her excitement, stirring our thoughts and curiosities, and encouraging us to embrace all our senses. She did it in folktales, fairies, and spirits. She definitely did it in Crimson Craft, and she's still doing it today in storytelling for magic. I say this because this author's provocative nature has stirred my desire to sit by a fire, reconnect with myself, the ancestors, peers, and generations to come through story. Words are magic. How we wield them is important. Storytelling for magic is the perfect guide to bringing intention into our narrative and enchantment into the world. Thank you for returning. Welcome to Fika. Halo.
Thank you so much. That's so beautiful. I love that you know the exact moment that you're like, I want to talk to this person. Five.
I only made it to page 5 when I was like, oh my goodness. Yes. And I thought, here's a rebel I can get along with. Here's somebody who says, think for yourself. And so, yeah.
Do you know, it's funny, I've had people come to me afterwards and say, I know you said that I should write in your book, but I can't do it. I can't do it. And I said, that's okay. You can use sticky notes. I like using sticky notes because you can put them in there. You can write all sorts of things, and then you can take them out if you change your mind.
Yes. As much as I do love the rebellious nature of your thought there, I tend to use sticky notes. They're a new invention that allows us to get over that. However, if I'm in a used bookstore and I find a book that has all this writing in it and underlining, oh, that one's coming home with me because I get to see what a third person thought.
Yep. I think the most recent book I got from a secondhand bookshop was, in fact, because it had comments and things in the margins, underlinings, and bits where the person had just written WTF question mark. And I'm like, I want to know what they were responding to.
Yes. It gives us a whole different dynamic to the whole art of freedom because we're reading it with part of the audience as well without even knowing them, and that is fabulous. So you agreed to do storytelling, and I really appreciate that. I realize this is not like a large stage or whatever that you're used to, but this is fantastic, and we decided that we're going to start with that today. So you're going to tell the story of Tamlin, and it will help us out later with the show with the other questions. So it's all yours, Halo. A little applause.
So some of you may already know the story of Tamlin, particularly from a song. So this story comes from what is known as one of the border ballads, one of the ballads from the border between England and Scotland, because there's some interesting things that happen in those liminal spaces, some interesting things that happen in the borders. And those borders at the time that these ballads were written and written down, well, they tended to be places of conflict and shift and change. But the story I want to tell you today is one of a young lady who decided to disobey her father. In the court of the king, the daughter, Janet, wanted to go to the woods. These were not just any woods, these were the woods of Carterhall. These were the deep forests where the fair folk were said to live, where you find the spirits, the fairies, where on occasion people would go missing. And in these particular woods, at this particular time, her father had warned her not to go because there was a fairy named Tam Lin. And Tam Lin liked the ladies. Janet, well, let's just say she'd never known a gentleman like that before, but she somewhat liked the idea of entering into a forest that belonged to her family when and where she pleased. And so she did. She walked into the woods. She walked in with her feet through her shoes, feeling the soft crunch of the fallen pine needles. Her nose breathing in that deep, rich scent of green, and the sunlight becoming dimmer and more dappled. The birds sang in the trees, many songs saying, "We are here, this is our space. Do you want me?" She walked deeper. This was her land, her family land. She could walk here if she chose, and she did. No man was going to stop her, and no man did. Deeper into the woods, into the forest she went, deeper through those trees, the deep ridges on the bark holding shadows that seemed to wink at her ever so slightly. Deeper and deeper she went, until the path opened out into a glade with a rose bush, and on that rose bush there were double roses, roses with two heads close to one. She gazed upon this rose, and she plucked one from the branch. In that moment, a young man all in green appeared with a glint in his eye, saying, "How dare you take a rose from these woods?" And Janet said, "Well, these woods are mine. They're my family's. I may take a rose if I please." Well, it didn't take long before the pair of them were in each other's arms, and Janet had a whale of a time on that soft bed of pine needles under the rose bush. She and the young man made love. But before the sun had set, he had disappeared, and she found herself wandering back out of the forest of Cartor. Back in her court, her father began to notice, as the days went by, Janet grew paler. She began to be sick in the mornings and in the afternoons, and somewhat green around the edges, and he called her to him. "Janet, my dear, please tell me truthfully." He made sure that they were behind closed doors at this point. "Janet, are you with child?" And she said, "Well, if I am, not a knight in your court will get the baby's name, for I have not lain with a mortal man." Her father paused for a moment and sent her on her way, and Janet realized that she must do something about the baby growing inside her. Back into the forest she went, back down that path through the trees with bark creases that winked and glinted, back through the scent of green to the glade with the rose bush still blooming, though the summer was late now. And there she called out to her lover. "Hello? Hello?" He did not come. She plucked a rose from the rose bush. "Hello?" he did not come. She began casting around for those flowers, those plants that she knew may get her out of the mess she was in. To be a pregnant woman with no husband, with no father on the scene, would not do. To bring a baby into the world would not do without a father by her side, particularly not in those times. As she looked, as she cast her eyes about, as she found what she was looking for, the young man appeared again. "Stay your hand! What are you doing?" She turned to him and said, "My love, I do not even know your name, but together we have gotten a child, and, well, are you a fairy man? Are you Tamlin, he who they speak of, he who they warn us of?" And he said, "Calm, please, calm. Yes, I am Tamlin, but I am no fairy. I am a mortal just like yourself. But 7 years ago, my father and I were hunting through these forests, and I fell from my horse, and the Queen of Fairies snatched me up and took me into her court. And for 7 years, I have lived a glorious life as part of the fairy world, as part of her court, of part of this realm. I have seen such things you would never believe, such beauty, such wealth, such magic. But it is said, there are whispers, it is said that every 7 years the fairy courts must pay a tithe to hell. And I am scared that it will be me. No one has said anything, but who else could it be? Who else would they keep for 7 years in such finery if they were not? Well, Janet took his hands. "Tamlin," she said, "what can I do? How can I help you?" And he told her. Soon it will be Halloween, All Hallows Eve. The summer is drawing to a close. The roses will die. And if you wait at Miles Cross, hide yourself there. On All Hallows Eve, the fairy court will ride by. Let go past the black horse, let go past the brown, but when you see the white horse, grab the rider and pull him down. It will be me, though you will not know me. Hold me tight, wrap me in your cloak and hold me tight. And though the fairy queen will turn me into many terrifying things, I will not harm you, for I am the father of your child. Hold me close and fear me not, and you will win me back." The months passed. The morning sickness passed. Janet could no longer hide her belly growing as All Hallows Eve came close. And she went and she waited as the sun set at Miles Cross. The light grew dark and dark and dark. The moon grew high and high in the sky. And as it reached the darkest point of the night, she felt the rumble thunder of horses' hooves coming swiftly, swiftly down the path to the crossroads where she waited. Swiftly, swiftly. First flew past a horse black as the night. Second flew past a horse brown as the trunks of the trees. And third came a horse as white as the face of the moon itself. She leapt from her hiding place, reached up and grabbed the rider, pulled him down, wrapped him in her cloak and held him tight as he fought against her. But she knew what she wanted and would not be denied. First, in her arms, he turned into a great lion, claws sharp and swift, batting about her face, and yet they were as soft as a kitten's toes. Then he became a serpent, writhing and screeching with a hiss that pierced her ears, and she feared it would bite her, but it did not. And then it became a hot poker, so hot that she could feel the fires of hell itself burning through the metal, and she held tight, although everything in her screamed to let go. And then he became a naked knight, wrapped in her cloak, held in her arms, shivering against the cold, cold night. Soon the ride reached Miles Cross, and the fairy queen herself, dressed all in green, on a horse so white it could not even be seen to have any shadows, with bells along its mane and tail. And she was furious. Her voice echoed from the forest itself, rumbled through the earth, soared down from the stars, pierced every part of Janet and of young Tamlin. And she said, "Tamlin, you have betrayed me. If I knew what you would do this night, then I would have taken both your eyes and turned your heart to stone. Never be seen in my forest again." And on the fair folk rode, on the fairy ride rumbles, and home Janet and Tamlin, wrapped in her cloak, home to her court they went. Now I would say they lived happily ever after. That may be a lie, but they did live well, and they did live long, and their child grew big and strong, with a touch of the enchanted about them. And Tamlin and Janet never stepped back in Carter Hall Woods again. Thank you.
You are just amazing, Halo. The timing, the voices, you've obviously been doing this for a while and doing it with passion. That was very, very enjoyable.
Thank you.
I don't know. And the perfect example for the things that we're about to discuss. Heidi says hello from Colorado. Good to see you here, Heidi. And she is also sending applause.
And I can see someone's making cookies.
My husband is making cookies while he's listening to the stories.
Yay!
Stories inspire cookies. So whether you're eating them because you already have them baked, or you're baking them while you're listening, that's the way to go. So, oh my goodness, I don't even know where to start. How long have you been telling the story of Tamlin?
Of Tamlin? Oh gosh. So I remember the first time I remember telling the tale of Tamlin was only actually, I think it was 3 years ago, when I teamed up with a local bookshop called the Bookshop by the Sea. And they were at that point actually by the sea. You could see out over the bay from their window. And we started a storytelling circle in Aberystwyth. And I think that was one of the first stories that I told there.
That atmosphere, to be having the waves and in this little bookstore and listening to this story, that would be amazing. You do live an enchanted life.
I do.
See, you can do it too by following her easy instructions. And Halo is an amazing person, but we all are. So we all have the skills to do that. So while I'm discussing that, because telling each story, you have to remember each story, and anyone who sees you telling that story can see that there's absolutely no pauses for memory. There was absolutely no, that we saw anywhere. You might feel, but the pauses were perfectly timed, and there might have been. It's just so. How long do you work on the story? For those who might think you just jump up there and da-da-da, how long does each of your stories take to prepare?
It depends on the story. So we are all storytelling beings, right? We're human beings are storytelling creatures, and we do it in our own mediums, in our own ways, but we all tell stories. We tell stories every day to each other. We tell stories to ourselves. We tell fictional stories, and we tell stories of our lives. And even when we tell the stories of our lives, we choose specific pieces that we're going to share, whether it's consciously or unconsciously, and we start to weave a picture. So when I'm coming to tell a tale, a traditional tale or a folk tale, or like that one. So Tamlin, as I said, it comes from a song, a ballad. What I do is I look for the bones of the story. And I talk about this in my book, Storytelling for Magic. So I look for the bones of the story and I make a note of those. And if it's a relatively short story, or if it's one that I've heard a lot, then making a note of the bones of them can be a mental exercise. It can just be sort of going over what they are. And so when I come to tell it, what I'm doing is remembering the key pieces as I get to them, imagining that I'm moving through the story, and then describing what I see. So the preparation time depends on how many pieces of the story are essential. So how many pieces make it what it is. So in that case, Janet, her father, her going into the woods at Carterhall where she shouldn't, Tamlin, the rose, her getting pregnant, her going back, him telling her what to do, the rescue, going home. So there's sort of these key points. If you leave any of those pieces out, like if she doesn't go and rescue him, it's a different story, right? If she doesn't go into the woods in the first place, it's a different story. So those are sort of key points in the tale. So it's, you know, if I sit and do it in a formal process where I'm writing it down and working it through, then it might take me, for a simple story, it might take me a few minutes to sit and write the bones down and to then kind of breathe those in. And I take them in almost as a magical act, right? I kind of breathe them in to let it sink in a relaxed way. Because when you relax, it's easier to remember. And then I imagine my way through it. And I'll practice telling a story by recording myself, because if I just try and think through it, then I get distracted because I'm excited by so many things and there's so much to love about the world that I'll go off on a tangent. So I'll sit and I'll hit record and I'll record myself telling it through. And so that takes as long as telling the story takes. And then after that, it's just every time I tell it, that's practicing it, that's honoring it, that's a devotional act. I'm quite lucky in that sort of form of the improvisational piece in between, where you're describing what's happening, filling in those pieces comes quite easily to me at this point. But I've got various structures and various tools that I'll add in when I'm having more difficulty with a story. And one of my weak spots is names. So I have a little book which I took with me to Druid camp, and I think I haven't actually unpacked it, but I've got a little book with all my stories in. And inside there, the first thing I'll write in my notes for a story before I put the bones are the names of the people and the names of the places. And then I'll write the bones of the action, what happens. And I also have a storytelling show where I do randomized storytelling. So this is the Fairy Doctor show. You've got videos of that on my YouTube if you want to go and check that out. And I have a doctor's bag, a medicine bag, and that in it has jars of different coloured yarn. And so I'll get my audience members to choose a jar of yarn, and on it it'll have a label with a theme on it, and that will inspire which story I tell. So because of that, I have to sort of periodically pull them out and go, oh yeah, what was in that story? And remind myself of it. So the short answer is that some stories I can tell immediately after hearing them if I'm paying attention, and it takes no preparation time at all. And other stories, it takes much longer. And they get better every time I tell them and every time I revisit them.
So if you want to hear more from Halo, jump over to the Fairy Doctor, and you can hear more of her stories. And which of course we want to do after hearing that. Robin, thanks for joining us. Robin, I miss you when you're not here, said, wow, that was absolutely amazing, Halo. Really enjoyed the story.
Thank you.
So she's gifted, isn't she? It's an amazing gift. So how long have you been like, I realize we all tell stories from the time that we're little, and you were probably one who told a lot of stories in their youth.
Yeah, I didn't shut up.
And I'm glad you didn't. It was, again, the provocative. If she had shushed when people told her to, what would have happened? Not this. This wouldn't have happened. Professionally, I don't even want to say professionally, because, like, these are skills that don't always get. So just named yourself a storyteller and did it. How long has that been going on?
So officially, I first got it into my head to ask my friend who told stories if I could be his apprentice. That would have been probably 2010, I think, possibly 2011. It was around about then. So getting on for 15 years ago. And I was actually in the cafe at the university we both went to. And I was talking to someone, and he was talking to someone else. We were having conversations at the opposite end of the cafe. And I suddenly just had this impulse, this spark of inspiration, this flash of awen that I couldn't ignore. And I said, I'm really sorry, please excuse me, to my friend. Bounced over to Brochvale, he's known in Druid circles. And I said, Broch, would you consider taking me on as an apprentice storyteller? And he said, yes, I'm going to be telling stories in the Iron Age roundhouses at Castle Helthis over the summer. Have you got Iron Age costuming you could wear? And I went, no. And he said, right, we'll make you some. And you can come along and tell tales with me. And so that's when I started, and where I started, round the fire, telling stories, mostly from a Mabinogi. So I started out with the story of Rhiannon in the first branch, and Blodaiwydd, and King Bran the Blessed. And so I was telling these tales in Iron Age gear, in an Iron Age roundhouse, and sort of stripping them back a little bit to take out some of the more modern medieval elements to make them more suitable, because they're some of the oldest stories that we've got. So that's where I started. And that took me, like, those stories took me probably a couple of weeks of working on them to get them in my head, to get comfortable with them. And it took me all summer before I was really confident in how I was telling them. So, yeah.
So how many stories do you have in your head, Halo? Do you have any idea?
No idea. In my little first aid kit, I've made a first aid kit with storytelling cards. So I've got little illustrations that I've been doing, and I started doing these this year. So this doesn't have all the stories I can tell. I think I've got somewhere in the region of 25 stories just in here. And then that I can tell off the top of my head without any preparation. There's probably at least another 25, 30 or so, like, long stories that I've learned and told over the years. And I do a whole show called The Goblin Circus, which are stories that traditional fairy tales that I've adapted the ending, so the characters end up coming and being part of the circus run by goblins. And those, yeah, there's probably another 24 of those stories with sort of little bits in between. So, yeah, some.
More than you're allowed to forget some names along the way when you have all of those names from 50 Tales in your head.
Thank you.
And you mentioned when you were talking earlier that when you're relaxed, you have a better chance of remembering those names. And because stress causes memory loss. And people are more and more concerned with that every day and looking for ways to stop that from happening so quickly in life, or not at all, or just calming down. How do you think that the storytelling, which is, we're going to the practical and physical, but do
Mm.
you think that storytelling has helped you in these ways? Just having to remember all of that, focusing your mind on something pleasant that you love, and just relaxing for the sake of your art.
Yeah, that's a really good question. So I turned 40 this month. Hello, fellow Leos. And so I'm aware that, right, I'm sort of hitting that point in my life where I'm more likely to start having difficulties with memory and things because of the shifts in hormones and all of that. So I'm very much hoping that this will help in that sense. And I do believe it will, because one of the things that it does is it helps me trust that I can remember.
It gives you, I never thought of that, giving you confidence, because we
Yeah.
lose our confidence and we haven't publicly spoken for a long time. Oh,
Yeah.
good note.
Yeah. So there are all these pieces. So one, your exits, if you're learning stories, even if you're not going to tell them, if you're learning stories, you're exploring story shapes, which means you're starting to see patterns, which means that then makes other things easier to remember, because you can see where the patterns match up. You can see where the characters are similar. So it gets easier to learn more stories the more stories you've learned. And if we're honest, we all know a lot of stories already. Right? If you think back to the classic children's stories, Little Red Riding Hood, The Three Little Pigs, nursery rhymes, and you might not remember them now if you're put on the spot and said, oh, sing a nursery rhyme, because you haven't done it for a while. But as soon as you're reminded of it, it's deeply there. So learning stories and learning songs helps you to practice your memory. It helps you to build up more layers of connections and more layers of patterns and archetypes that you can hang other things on. They hold in them messages and stories and information. So, as you know from my Folktales, Fairies and Spirits, and the reason I wrote that book was because those stories hold keys and clues to magical practices and ways of building relationship with the fair folk and the spirits of the land and the other spirits that we share this world with. So by learning the stories, you're learning more than just the story that is on the paper or in your head. And then, as I say, it gives you more confidence in your memory, so you trust your memory. So when you're trying to remember something, you relax a bit more. But if you remember, I was saying that I learn the bones of a story and then I kind of describe what happens in between. The practice of doing that and playing with it. So you're playing an imagination game. You're playing a creative game that we all play when we're small. We play at making up stories. We play at remembering how we got from one thing to another, because we can't remember, because we're small and the world is big and it's full of lots of things. And so we know that we woke up this morning and we know that we're now at home around the dinner table and someone's asked us, what did you do today? I can't remember. So we play. So when we practice that process of both strengthening our memory, learning all of those patterns to hang things on, and then practicing that improvisational skill and that playfulness, we then also begin to trust our ability to fill in the gaps successfully and fill in the gaps of what we know, and to trust ourselves to hold that space, even if we don't remember exactly what it is that was supposed to go somewhere. We can't remember exactly the words we wanted to say. We can then trust ourselves to hold that space and to communicate from the feeling of it, or from the image of it, or from the concept or the message or whatever it is that we're trying to get across.
So it's a matter of all these things. We should all talk more, because that will build our confidence in being able to reach in and find what we want to say. We should see the patterns in our own conversations, actually learn our own stories, so that we can display them in the same way. And it could take, when you have, that's another thing. Confidence removes a lot of stress in life, the anxiety. So it's about doing.
And it's about remembering that we're playful. It's remembering how to play, because play relaxes us. So at the same time as being able to relax helps my art, doing my art helps me to relax, and it feeds me.
It just keeps going around in circles.
Oh, hello.
This, this
Am I
going
back?
around. Yeah, you didn't go away.
Okay. What was going around in circles?
Oh, I mean, the giving and the taking and the whatever, you breathe it out,
Oh,
you
yes.
breathe it in. So it was circles. Okay, see that? Even the simplest story can get confused because we're not used to talking. We need to talk more together, Halo. We won't do that. So when you've always loved stories, you were a kid that loved stories. And it's difficult not to chase shiny things. I just want to say, when you want to share them with all the world, you have to study it. You have to see it. Some people study one thing their whole life, and this is what they share. But there are those of us who see it all, want to share it all. It's all amazing, and move on to the next thing. That is a wondrous way to live, I think. It's a way of keeping oneself useful.
And of course, one of the things that I've found, so I've always been the kind of person who gets excited and moves on to other things. And over time, I started to find that I would come back. And every time I'd come back, okay, I might be a bit rusty at something, but I'd come back to it and I'd bring something from what I just learned. And I've gotten to this point and I can actually see where all of the things are connecting up. So my work with the fair folk, my work with stories, my work with ritual, and my work with like sacred sensuality and embodiment. And you think, okay, being away with the fairies and telling stories and being embodied and embodied magic, they sound like three very different things, but they all connect up, they all feed each other. Because when we tell stories, when we're embodied, we share it more powerfully in the world. When we connect to the fair folk and we're embodied, then we connect to them on more levels and we build that relationship more deeply. When we come to embodiment, we can then learn what we've learned in the stories to support us with how to do that and how to reconnect. We're working with all the different parts of ourselves. And yeah. And also, yeah, it's all circles again.
I was going to say, it's amazing when you actually see that trail of your life behind you and how you're just a baby at at 40 and seeing it, but add another 23 years to that and it is the most. You think that you've gone through your life with nothing holding you, just like, I'm going here, I'm going there, I'm going over here, and then one day you stop and think, oh my goodness, it just everything, it either gave me confidence to do that or somebody said something, and it does all truly come together. It's one of the most magical things, I think.
It really is. It really is.
And you look at yourself in the mirror and you think, was I telling myself this the whole time? Like, did I know this before to get to this person? So it's now cold chills. I mean, it is. I'm excited for you to see that and to see that, you're not really chasing everything. You're just chasing many interests that lead into one.
Yeah.
So
I'm following the magic, following enchantment.
And following the magic, going with the flow. That takes confidence. But some days
people tell me that it takes confidence, and it does on the one hand, but there's always that thing of trust, of trusting that it's going to be okay, trusting that the story of your life will hold you, trusting that the spirits are there even at the points when you can't feel them, trusting that you chose this path for a reason, and trusting that even when shit happens, but
which
even when stuff happens, which it does, because there is a whole world of stuff out there, and not everything happens because it's something we've chosen or something. Like, there's stuff that happens that's disruptive, but in those moments, holding yourself and just holding on to that trust that you will get through it, and that you are connected, and there are things that are good with you that you can carry through that.
Well, in like you said, that Janet, right, went into the forest. It was Janet went into the forest, and she wasn't supposed to. And I thought at that time, how many stories happened because we did what we weren't supposed to do when we threw caution to the wind, because those create the challenges that force us to grow into other things. Yes.
So that's a really, really interesting piece. And one of the reasons that I chose that story, so in the book I talk about creating ritual from story and working with stories that you feel drawn to and that are going to be helpful. This story, I'll often talk about tales where you see examples of good relationships with the spirits and good relationships with the land. In this story, it ends well, but there's a piece in there where Tamlin didn't know whether or not he was going to be sacrificed. That was a rumor. And that was a later, like the idea of a tithe to hell is a later addition to the older fairy folk faith. So by that point, when these ballads are happening, they're interlinked, right? There's Celtic Christianity.
Yeah, they've been Christianized.
Yeah, and so
having sex in the forest was I was going to say, so having sex in the forest was frowned upon. We can have that,
right, right, and so you've got this piece, but Tamlin goes against the spirit that has given him hospitality. So he fell from his horse in the forest, and she picked him up. He might have died if she hadn't. We don't know. It might be that she was caring for him, and if he lasted the full 7 years and trusted the process and didn't betray her, it might have been that she'd have given him gifts instead, as happens with Thomas the Rhymer. But he doesn't. He gets scared and finds a way out. So he does escape. But this is how so many fairy stories end, is that the mortals involved break a taboo. They break a taboo, or they do something that they shouldn't, or that is disrespectful to those spirits, and so they lose any gifts that they gained. But if they can keep that good relationship, then they gain gifts and their freedom. Of course, as Thomas points out in Thomas the Rhymer, the tongue that cannot lie may be a gift, but it's also a challenge in the marketplace, in a diplomatic space for a politician,
Yes, so, the rule "do not lie" has a whole lot of contingencies beside it. It's just like, oh yes, no, that's not going to go over well. So there is a lot to learn in all of these tales, and like as you said, the hidden magic of that once was is also hidden within these tales. Okay, Robin would like to know, in today's world, Halo, which is saturated with technology and information, do you think we're losing the spiritual or human connection that only a storytelling can create?
So this has several layers to it, right? I'm going to say this with the caveat that it's not only storytelling that can do this. We have other spaces where we come together and we're human together. And so it doesn't have to be specifically spoken storytelling, and it doesn't have to be what we think of as telling tales. But I'm going to talk about storytelling because that's where
that's our topic today.
Because that's our topic. So there is something really special about that experience of being in a space, particularly if you're in person, but if not live over a video is, it's nice. It's got an element of it where you're being human together and where you're co-creating the story. So the storyteller might be the one speaking, but the people listening are also creating the world, creating the story with them. So you've got this almost unique experience that we don't get when you're watching a TV program, you're watching a film, because it's all there on the screen in front of you. And you don't even get it when you're reading a book, because you're reading it off the page and what's written is set and can't be changed. when you're experiencing a work of art, a work of story, with a storyteller in the moment, whether they're a professional or not, you're having a conversation. So when I'm telling a tale to people, particularly if I can see them or hear them if they're in the room with me, you can feel where people are at. You can hear people's breathing. You can notice when they're distracted or when something particularly sparks their interest. And you can respond to that. So there's a direct conversation going on in an in-person storytelling situation. In an online situation, it's a little bit different, particularly if there's no video component. I can't see people, so it kind of feels a little bit like I'm telling them to avoid. But I know there are people there, and so I can feel that energetic response. And so I kind of reach out and connect for the duration of that story and go, I'm offering this to you, this magic to you in this moment, in this time. And I think that that magical element, that spirit element, is very much present. I definitely find that a lot of people are scared to tell stories because they've been discouraged from it, whether they were discouraged from speaking up or whether they've gotten the impression, because most of what we see as entertainment, and we put storytelling in the bracket of entertainment, we see as entertainment as very polished and done by professionals. And we're never going to be at that standard of polish when we start out. And we're never going to be at that standard of polish if we don't have a team of producers and lots of money behind us polishing things up and editing out the ums and airbrushing the video, and, whatever, cutting things nicely, right? So we know we can't do it like that, and so we think that we're not good enough, and that definitely loses something spiritual and something important in our nature as being humans together, as playing together, which is what storytelling is. It's playing a game together, connecting together, and we travel together then into those the trance states, the relaxed states, being in a storytelling situation that's holding you well. Doesn't matter if it's a polished storyteller or a small child that's doing their best. If you relax into that space with them and they hold your attention, everyone kind of co-regulates. Our minds and our nervous systems and our bodies calm down. We breathe together, we connect. And that does all sorts of things physiologically. It does things mentally. It does things spiritually. It opens us up to the truth of being present. And that is something that we very definitely lose when we forget that we don't have to be polished like on the computer. We can just be present and imperfect together. Now, I was a little bit late signing on to the video beforehand to do our little check-in, because I realized that we weren't, so this is me being vulnerable with you all, because I realized that because it wasn't on Zoom, I wouldn't be able to put one of my pictures up behind me. And I suddenly had oh no, I need to tidy up some of the things because I've got like instruments and chaos and stuff sticking out. And I'm like, I'm just gonna, obviously if you can see me on the video, you can still see like there's a dragon puppet up there and an elf. And
this is a look into your mind that creates these stories. It is, I've had that argument with people who people suggest nicely things and they're like, you should just have a white background, you should just have, and I'm like, no, when I watch it, I want to see what's back there, I want to see what that person's reading, I want to see who they are. So I'm loving it. I'm loving your background because it's a reflection, and I love that. I love the brightness of that.
Thank you. I want to introduce you, if I can get her down. No, I can't get her down. I was going to introduce you to my elf puppet. She's started to come out, and her brother has started to come out as part of the Goblin Circus. And I'm not good with puppets, but I love them because people respond to them. Adults respond to them with that sense of, oh, I'm allowed to play. This is a toy that I'm allowed to play with. And then they start to play and interact with them as a magical person. So, yeah.
It's unfortunate that, go ahead, that people forget.
I was just going to say, this is one of the things about storytelling, is it's also often, now that we've got all these like TV and books and all these highbrow entertainment stuff. Storytelling is often thought to be for kids, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it's the adults that need it the most. Children get lots of stories and they love it and they're great and they play, but we need it more than they do, even, because we need that permission to imagine, to reconnect, to connect with each other. Anyway.
I know exactly, and I just want to, before we got sidetracked, on the thing I was going to say, you said what you said beautifully about the connections, and I just wanted to add, when you talk about being in the space with the child, listening to the story, unfortunately, I think that because sometimes children are dismissed as, oh, they're just nonsensical or whatever, their stories aren't listened to. And if, as an adult, you listen to that story, you can find out a lot about that child that they might not tell you, what they like, what they're afraid of. It's a glimpse into their soul to take that time. And also, I had discussed this idea of the storyteller reading the room, if we want to put it shortly, seeing who's distracted. Now, if I look distracted, A, I have to check everything going on here, and B, there is now the smell of cookies coming up, wafting up to me. So it's not fair. But reading the room to see if you're going on too long in one space for the audience, that is such a skill that, because we haven't been humaning much, we lose when we are talking. Like, it's important for people to listen to our stories, but it's also important for us to find a way to communicate them so that people want to listen to them.
Right. And this is part of communication, right? It's not just about choosing the right words for what you mean or saying it in a certain way. It's also about communicating in ways that can be received and ways that make sense to the other person, ways the other person can hear it. And you'll get it sometimes where, or I get it sometimes where I'm telling a story and there are people who are just there because kind of they have to be. And finding ways of inviting them in if they want to be invited in is a challenge that I quite enjoy. It's something that I'm like, I quite enjoy making space for them to feel included. But they don't have to. It's an invitation. So as long as they're not being disruptive, then that's up to them. But that's the point of where you connect. And one of the easiest ways of doing it is, even in a non-magical setting, is to do that offering up magically, energetically. So obviously this is my background, and I consider storytelling to be an enchantment that you offer to people and they choose whether or not they want to accept it. And it's the kind of enchantment that everyone understands, even if they're not pagan or whatever. You understand the enchantment of a story, you understand what kind of effect it's going to have on you. So it's the kind of enchantment that you can offer and people know what they're consenting to, what they're opting into. So holding that space and beginning to hold that space and open up that space magically then allows you to sort of start doing it physically and vocally as well. So it doesn't matter which layer you start to work on it with, whether you're doing it with the technical skills or the energetic skills, they all feed into each other.
And the back and forth. Well, and because we all know that stories, I mean, I remember as a child, my favorite stained glass window in the church was the one where all the children were sitting in front of Jesus listening to the stories. And that even has parables for people to learn from. There are so many dynamics to just getting up from, which doesn't mean we should start being preachy either, but from getting across an idea to a difficult crowd that may not be accepted directly. People aren't good with direct information, right? So if we make it a little more common, and just to, it is, my opinion is that, and I'm saying it, no, my opinion is that people are being shut down more and more every day. I'm going to say something that's going to cause it's, an argument, or I'm going to say something that isn't going to be perfect. I might have some of my facts wrong, or, on social media, I didn't use the right grammar. Well, if you're checking the grammar out, you're not listening to my message anyway. So bye bye to you. Um,
Yeah, if you can correct my grammar, then you knew what I meant.
Exactly. You could read what was said. But it's just because this is their way of shutting down a different idea. And I think that's important for people to understand. Story, we can't lose. Yeah. I have often. What's that? Yeah.
So you just reminded me, like, this is a piece of that question Robin was asking, is that we've gotten so, and I know I do it on social media, we've gotten to a point where everything is sort of sound bites. It needs to be really short. When we're reading through there, we expect it to be these tiny, tiny little pieces of information that somehow contain everything, all of the context. And when we read it, we're like, oh, but they've missed out this, this, and this. It's like, well, of course they have, because they were just writing one little thought. But so that sort of short form microblogging interaction, that again starts to strip away some of the being human together, the story, the context. So I think that is something that has contributed to us losing pieces that are really important, is reducing communication to sound bites that are just designed to, like, get your attention and then you move on. So yeah, I think that's a piece. And you were saying about listening to the small child, right? Because it'll tell you something about them. Listening to everyone, any story that anyone will tell you. But small children have a beautiful, fascinating perspective. Sometimes what they're saying can be really tedious to listen to because they've got such limited experience. But their perspective is so different to ours because they're in such a different stage in their life. And I'm saying ours because I'm assuming most people on here are adults living in the adult world somehow. But because their perspective is so different, it can help us see something not just about them, but about the world that we might have forgotten.
Oh, it's definitely, and they remember what we say. Like, I remember I had nieces and nephews when I was in my early 20s, and I had been laid off, so I was concerned about what I was going to do with my life. And they said, "What's wrong?" And I told them, and they're like, "Well, you can be a clown. You said there was a clown school. You can be this, you can be," and just opened me up to all those possibilities I had thought about. Yeah, I could be a clown. Like, what am I upset about? Like, they are wonderful because they are still there, still thinking, and not afraid to tell their stories. It's what we do. Robin says that you have a lovely way of explaining things, and it's another nice show, and he's really enjoying this. So thank you, Robin. Robin likes to calm. That he finds. But yes, when we bring ourselves into their world, like you said, when we get down on that knee and we bring ourselves into that world, I think we probably do understand them better because we've circled ourselves in that kind of thing. But yes, definitely, like you were talking about, the polished look, the whatever. And I mean, that's one of my purposes here, is just like, I'm going to do this. I want to do this. I can play. I want to have an intelligent conversation once a week, with somebody, and just go. And it's not perfect. And people will say it's not perfect. And I will say, that's how you know we're real. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. This isn't AI because AI wouldn't be this rumpled.
You're rumply nice. I actually like that now. I think I like rumpled people. When you mention it, because they have all those places and those nooks and crannies to discover about. And I'm sorry, I digress. Okay. I do that often.
Digressions are fun.
But it is important, and I am old enough and been through enough that they aren't going to make me cry in a corner. Okay. And I think so that those of us that are at that point, I mean, if they got really bad, they might make me go. But I mean, I got this little magic wand here that says bye, 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 if I want to, if they're mean. But but I
Don't
think
be,
that
don't be
those
mean.
there is
What's the point
no
of
no.
mean? Yeah.
It's the
Sorry.
audience.
Carry
I
on.
mean,
Carry on.
yeah, no, it's just thinking about comments. Sometimes they can be mean. Not here. I've never had any problems, but I think, yeah, it's good for us to set an example and get up there and say, okay, if I can do this, if I can, you know, take this chance, you can too. So
Mm.
one of the things I was wondering, because as far as I'm concerned, everybody should be a storyteller or want to be, or we all are in our lives, as you say. What have you had young storytellers come to you and tell you what their fears are when doing this? What would stop someone?
I'm trying to think about young storytellers, like new storytellers.
Yes. Yeah, I'm now
Yeah.
the age.
Yeah. So I actually recently finished running a course on storytelling and the magic of storytelling called the Cauldron of Arwen. So we did an intensive, like, 3 months working through helping people to build up their storytelling skills, to create a story that they wanted to tell. Everyone wanted to tell their own a story that they'd written, so that's what we did rather than learning a traditional one. And we worked with Ceridwen and Taliesin. And so there were things that came up for people there that were, it was mostly around memory, but there were bits around, like, what if I forget a word in the middle of things? What if I mess up? What if I say something stupid? And they're all, you can hear that it's all a sort of a worry about being imperfect, right? And about forgetting. And there's a couple of things that I said in response to that. One of them is that focus on learning those bones so that you have a structure to support you, so that you really feel that you are held by those. The second piece is then to practice it. And you can practice it with notes, but it's best to practice as soon as possible with no notes, even if you just tell a really simple version. Because when you're telling a story, you're in a different space. The energy is different, your mindset is different than if you're thinking it or writing it or sitting and learning it. And because you're in a different space, then your memory works differently. So you might have heard about memory palaces. One of the ways of learning things that you want to learn is by imagining reminders of them spatially on a journey, or within, imagining that the inside of your head is a house or a big mansion or whatever, where you put different things in different rooms to remember them. So our memories work spatially. And that means that when we're on a stage or around a fire or in front of someone, rather than in our room at home learning something, we're in a different space. So we're tapping into a different bit of memory. But it also means that our memories work really well at remembering stories, because it's remembering places and people and things that happened. And we're good at that because that's how we live. Like, we might not be good at all the details, but we're good at the key beats, at the main points. So trust in your structure, practice it so that you can see that you can do it, so that you can hear yourself telling a story and learn that it's okay, and learn how it feels in those spaces. Remember that your memory is designed, it evolved to learn stories and to remember stories. And remember that it's okay if you aren't perfect, because those imperfections, those moments of messing up and of going, oh, I'm rumpled, oh, I forgot that word, oh, yeah, you can then invite the audience in. So if you make it a thing that isn't a, I'm so bad and wrong because I've messed up, if you go, oops, I messed up, where were we? Help me get back on track. People join with you in it. They connect with you as another human being. So if you trip over your words, or you forget the next piece and you go, hold on a second, take a breath. You can take a pause. You can ask people, what do you think happened next? And while those things are happening, Your mind is busy in the background, like trying to think of what you want to do next or trying to remember the next piece, but you're distracting your conscious mind slightly so that there's space for that memory to just bubble to the top. And maybe someone in the audience knows and they give you the prompt, and that brings everyone together and makes it humans being human together, humans creating together. And it not only does that in the moment, but it also means that those people then feel empowered to have a go, even if they're worried about being imperfect.
No, and as you say, if you become upset, if you become scared, then you become protective of yourself. That's natural. And you're putting up a wall so that you're not enjoying that feedback back and forth. Like I could almost picture someone telling a story and forgetting Pinocchio and saying, Henry, well, you said this, and all these little giggles coming out saying, no, it's Pinocchio. So it becomes part of the show, part of the act, and brings them back to you.
There's also that thing, and I learnt this when I was doing belly dancing. So I did belly dancing for a few years as a part of a troupe. It was an improvised form, and we weren't professional, but we were sharing quite a lot of it. And when you make a misstep, the audience don't know that that wasn't what you meant to do. Even if you're dancing with everyone else and everyone else goes right and you go left, they don't know that you weren't meant to do that. So if they all go right and you go left and you go, oops, and you turn to go right with them again, and you keep smiling and keep breathing and go, oh, well, then people actually, if they even remember it, they assume it was part of the performance. But for the most part, they don't even notice that something went wrong because you were sharing your love of what you were doing. And
no, they see the passion, they see that you're trying, and most people are kind, regardless of what we see. They are. I remember doing the show at the beginning, and between all the tech and the people and just everything, I made some really, really big mistakes, but they kept coming back. And we haven't had any mean people. It's just like, so many others or whatever said, well, if you're not making mistakes, you're not trying anything, right? And it just brought out the kindest thing in people while I was falling apart. So, and it may happen next week. Well, knock on wood, it doesn't happen this week. So it is, I think, it's the entire experience of putting yourself out there. There's so much that is wrapped up in this storytelling thing that comes back and back, and it really just comes back to talking and sharing.
Yeah. And the thing with it is that your audience doesn't have to be other human beings either. So again, I talk about this in the book, that when we're doing storytelling as part of our magical practice, or we're using those skills as part of our magical practice, we could be telling stories to the spirits, telling stories to the land, telling stories of them as well, to honor
to our
them,
imaginary
also,
friends.
But yeah, to our imaginary friends. but
other people focus.
Yeah. But that's one of the pieces. So obviously I'm one of the on the more woo end of the spectrum, and I say that with love for woo. But that's we're telling stories to the world, and that world includes, they know in they're doing scientific tests, plants respond to your voice. They respond to voices. Mushrooms talk to each other. Animals respond to voices. Apparently cows love it if you sing to them. They love human singing. So when you're speaking, you're sharing something. When you're sharing story, you're sharing song, you're sharing something that just brings joy to the world, whether it's humans or other than human.
Well, yes, I mean, everything has energy. That's a scientific form. So you speak about the vibrations in this. So just the vibrations of our voice is going to prick at that energy in some way. That's just common sense. And I speak to my technology not so nicely sometimes, but it also allows us to get that story out in that moment without, I would throw you across the room, but I can't afford a new computer. So, we have to work this out kind of thing. But no, and that's practice. That's practice to get that story. Yes, Robin. Robin says the frequency of words we speak are very powerful, I think, and that's important. You talk about as you talk about taking storytelling and moving it into magic. You talk about bringing it in for guided journeys, meditations, and things like that. That it is just meant for that kind of thing. Heidi agrees. So what is it about the vibrations of storytelling that would make it different perhaps than other forms of talk to be assistance in, as we said, guided meditations? It just falls in that. Is there a specific, like you speak in a certain cadence or?
Yeah, so if you listen to people telling stories or doing guided visualization, guided journeys, guided relaxations, anything like that, you'll notice that different people do it slightly differently. And the ones that work better for you might not be the same as the ones that work for me. But there are some hallmarks that generally make for a successful guided guided journey, guided trance. And that relies on the way in which our brains, kind of the brain waves go, and the way in which we relax. So there's a couple of components to it, right? There's obviously the words that we choose. So making the words inviting rather than demanding, making them open enough that you're not describing things in such detail that people are sort of stuck on, well, that wasn't what I was thinking of. So it's sort of making that space, right? So making permission. This is the same whether it's story or trance. But then in a trance space, where in storytelling you might kind of ramp up something to be big and vibrant, and for sort of a dramatic a telling of Thor and the giants, and we'll swing the hammer this way and that. With a trance, you're bringing people into relaxation. You're bringing that brainwave state, that state of consciousness, down to something more relaxed. And so a slightly slower pace, a gentler voice, softer, and a steadier rhythm can be really helpful. And so you can probably hear what I'm doing. I'm illustrating this as best I can off the top of my head.
No, it's perfect.
Yeah.
Yes,
So it's
because
that sort of
and
then of course.
Okay, no, you're just making me think that once again in our daily conversations, that if we would like people to not manipulate, but to act in a certain way, our voice could be another way to encourage that.
Yeah, and there are some people who will, if someone's really angry and you start talking in a really soft, soothing voice, then that can be antagonistic, right? Yeah. But you can use a little bit of consciously think about the way in which you are, whether you are feeding those fires and stoking the fires of excitement, of anger, of nerves, of whatever, or whether you're kind of meeting them somewhere there and talking them down. Not trying to necessarily force them to think a certain way or to act a certain way, but to diffuse a situation to help people calm down so they can communicate better with them. So, but bear in mind, it's not always safe to try and lull a stampeding rhino to sleep.
Yeah, but it wouldn't be safe with me. It just would be like, take your soft voice. And because I need to get this out in this manner now. But
you need to be heard.
Yeah, that's right. I need to be heard. I need to be heard, people. Don't turn this off. You need, with those feelings, and that, I think a voice is a tool and an instrument, and so you use it in different degrees. When people say you should never shout, I think, okay, so if someone's stepping on my foot, I say, will you please get off my foot? If they don't answer, I'll say, get off my foot. And if they still don't answer, I'm going to yell, get the blank off my foot, right? Because it's not working and you have to go through what you work. So yeah, it is a tool. And once again, like I said, we have to decide how we're going to use it. And you use yours lovely. I'm just soaking it all up. So very persuasive, very persuasive. I have so many thoughts in my head right now.
I could see them.
I
can see you thinking.
I know people are like, and I'm like, no, I got to think and I have to do technical and I have to keep you entertained. It's a lot. So you decided when you went to this gentleman and said, please, may I be your apprentice? Which is a lovely story. Because there you were taking a chance that could have gone any way whatsoever. And once again, you just followed it. You went off the path, regardless of whether you had grandma's cookies in your hand or not. You were just gone and out of there to catch those flowers. Had you thought about being a storyteller earlier? That was it.
No, it was literally that moment. So as a child, I used to like tell stories to my brothers, or I'd put story cassette tapes in my little Walkman and stuff it in my teddy bear puppet and have my teddy bear tell stories to me. And so I was interested in stories. And I got interested in folk tales and things because I was fascinated by the fair folk. But that was the moment that I decided, I wonder if I could be a storyteller. I bet
it's wild.
Yeah. Absolutely. And he was like, he's a friend, so he'd been a friend for a few years, so I knew he was the kind of person that would be up for it. But it was just in that moment something, and I describe it sometimes as like, it was like the white rabbit beckoning to Alice, and I'm like, I just had to do it. And he had an opportunity that he could take me on, and it was a paid storytelling gig, so he got paid. And he paid me in costuming. So the first session, I got paid in a pair of Iron Age shoes that we'd made together. And on the final go, he paid me in a silver torque, which is like a sort of open-sided circle, for those that don't know, that I'd been wearing all summer. I absolutely loved it. And he gave it to me at the end as my payment for telling stories. And so I've then worn that for ritual and storytelling since, as I did my time then learning the basics and getting that piece. But yeah, it really was just an out of the blue ridiculous idea that I'd never thought about before, and it completely changed the whole course of my life.
Was that when you decided to take your doctorate in story philosophies of story?
Yeah, philosophy of storytelling. So I'd actually started it in, so it must have been 2011 rather than 2010. I'd already started it at that point, and I was doing, in philosophy of art, I was looking at the painter, specifically at Paul Klee, so a particular painter. And the core of my PhD thesis is about that experience of co-creation. And so the question, what is art? And the idea that art is those objects that are created by someone that open up a world for us, that when we encounter them, we step into a conversation with them and it opens up a world in some way, it opens up some kind of truth. And so I was sort of struggling through it with visual art, and then storytelling came through, and at a certain point it all kind of clicked together, and I went, I shouldn't be writing this about painting, I should be writing about storytelling, because storytelling, there's no time between the creation of the art and the encounter with the art. The creation and the encounter are the same thing that happen in the same moment. And so that experience to me is just magical.
Yeah, no, it is. I'm I'm just listening here. It's fascinating. So if we like out of this book, I think the major points that I've gotten so far is that anybody can be a storyteller.
Everybody already is.
Everybody already is. You're already a storyteller. However, it would be helpful if you got storytelling for magic and looked through, because there are, no matter how old you get, there are always things that you can be told or remind you or whatever. And this is why, can you hold up the book again? I've
Yeah.
got the picture, but it doesn't show. Okay. This is why these books are so important. No, they're not huge, but they put it
Pocket
out
size.
in exact detail. Yeah, they're big enough because they put it out in the exact details you need it. I don't want, when I'm rushing around in life and there are many other things to do, I do not want a text volume for everything. I want a recipe book. And what
Mhm.
this is a recipe book to storytelling. So it can be used as Halo's books often are, like a workbook, a fun book. There are exercises that you do along the way. And there are exercises to motivate you, to keep you on track. And they have the information. Also, she has resources at the back of it, as Mini Moon Books Publishing, a lot of people do. But resources for you to further your study if you would like. And also on her website, um, she has a list that she keeps adding to along the way. So you are never left alone without resources. It's a very practical book to get you to open up to the idea of professionally storytelling, but also if you just want to improve on conversations. I think it's so important that we read the room when we're doing that and we hear other people's thoughts. We see their mind moving in a million different ways, so we give them a break so they can bring it back together again. This book, I think, would be helpful to early not that storytelling is for kids, but you do have story circles during daycare and nursery school and things like that. So it'd be good for anybody that is instructing in those things to bring them to the place of the children, to improve their skills with practical things like drinking water and down to breathing, and also just for enjoyment. We talk about, well, give us some ideas of where your stories come from, Halo.
For me, so where do my stories come from?
Like the
That's a big
stories that you
question.
tell. Yes, like
Yeah,
you.
yeah. So I find them, I listen to other storytellers. I obviously don't tell their versions of stories, but if I hear a story that really resonates with me, then I go and look it up and find the different versions of it. So I will find them in libraries, in books of folk tales and mythology, in the old myths. So some of the stories that I'd most love to tell are old mythology from the mythological things. And I really like going, you can find different versions throughout history of the same myth and choose which one resonates with you most, which one feels like it's going to hold that space. So yeah, talking to people and asking people what their favorite stories are. That's always
That
fun.
also helps you get to know the person.
Yeah, yeah. And
It,
sometimes it's really surprising.
yes, yes, I have a family that is donating a huge amount of books to my little library. And the matriarch is a grandmother who is 99 years old. And she loves the Reacher series. And that is the most fabulous thing to me in the entire world, because if I was, it shows me that maybe I shouldn't stereotype people so much, because you do things you don't realize you do. And I just think that's wonderful. That's not what you would expect.
Yeah.
So you do get to know more about people like that.
Indeed.
And
And
as you said,
and I
you
was just
said
going
in
to
the,
say,
you
sorry,
go.
go on
I was gonna say,
then.
okay, I'm just going. As you said, no, it's not you. It's the two of us. Okay. As you said in the book, that because fairy tales and all of those things are public domain, you can change them up. You don't have to worry about getting licensing or anything. It's an easy route to take. Okay, go Halo.
Yeah. But with the caveat that the versions that you find in books might be specific versions that author has collected or written. So always double check if there's an older version, or if there's a particular version that you want to tell, then reach out to that storyteller, that author, and ask, can I tell this version of the story, and give credit. So you talking about like who the book's for, and just sort of reminded me to kind of say it is only what are we, 90 pages or whatever it is, 96 pages including the appendices. It's short for a reason. I wrote this book because so many people would come up to me after I tell stories, particularly in ritual, and say, I wish I could do that, but I don't know how to start. And so I wanted to lay out step by step a process that people could follow. And other people will have different processes, but this is one that has sort of step by step to break it down. You can dip in at any point for where your skills are. So if you already know what stories you want to tell, well, you can always skip the bit on finding stories, and you can go into, well, how do I learn them? How do I memorize them? How can I break it down? How can I get better at improvising? What techniques are there for memorizing? So I wanted to put it down so that it was a little handbook, because in so many spaces, we talk about storytelling, and we talk about improving our memory, and we talk about using our voices to do magic, to enchant, to share, to communicate. We talk about being heard, so making your voice big if you're talking to a big group of people in a context. But we very rarely actually sit and share how you do those things. How do you learn those stories? What kind of processes can you use? And once you start trying the thing, this is why it's a small but intensely practical, because I wanted to give people those tools and a step-by-step process that you can jump in at wherever it is that you're at, in order to pick up the skills that you feel you need to feel confident enough to actually start sharing.
I think it's perfect for that. I do not think longer is better. The more I read in life, like there can be a 500-word novel, which is not wonderful because you could have said it in 320, pages, right? I am not in for the long haul. I love these books because they have it layered out, big subtitles. Tell me, Vicky, that's what you need to do. And the editing it takes to get these things concisely, like to sit down and write out your method of doing everything, and then go in details, and then 2 weeks later think, oh my God, I forgot this, and take yourself back there is incredible work. On top of it, we're all budgeted. I'm on a fixed income right now. They're $5.95 for the ebook. Okay. I checked.
Yeah, it's less than a tenner for a physical copy, which is almost, in UK, is almost unheard of at this point for a book.
Oh gosh, it's $50 for a book.
Yeah,
of information out there now. I can't. I love authors and I want to support all authors, but I don't believe it's the authors that are benefiting with this. And in a time when we should be encouraging people to read, we're giving them another reason not to.
And this is something that I do want to say. I love Moon Books for like they've got a wonderful, Moon Books in particular have a really wonderful ethos of supporting the authors that want to get involved. There's a real community behind the scenes, but they also, like, the books aren't horrendously priced. The size, they let you publish the smaller books, where some other publishers are a bit funny about it because, you can't put the markup so much. So they want to make those texts accessible. They want to make the material accessible.
It's a practical, for me, it's what witchcraft and folk magic and all of that is about. It's people working together, bringing the ideas, sharing it, not wanting to wait for that big payoff. I love the energy, and people, once again, Vicky is not getting paid for Moon Books, so she can say whatever she wants to here. But I was thinking the other day, when people I was I was having. Anyhow, I was saying, I just want to stick with my moon book witches because they're fun and they're nice, and I get to talk about things I want to.
And there's a lot of us to choose from.
There's a lot of you. And I'm learning. So, I am learning so much when I think about the last couple of years or so. Just reading these books and reminding and just falling in love, like I said, with this one, because it is direct. I don't want, if it doesn't work, I've said it before, I'm pragmatic. If it doesn't work, just move on with it. Okay. And you can see that these things work. And and here being in Canada, you can order them from Indigo and you don't have to pay shipping. You can just go to the closest store and pick it up there. So all of Moon books are on Indigo, fellow Canadians. And so we can be good in the moment and purchase it in country. It is. You can see that you guys are working together and you're having fun as well as doing a lot of hard work, because you're all going all the time and promoting this. Okay, I forgot about the praise for storytelling for music and got into the praise for Moon books, but I'm just loving
it's true though, right? Like the physical the product itself, actually, it does make a difference. And it's like, that sounds so corporate, doesn't it? The product itself, but the being able to have a tangible book in your hand. I love books. For me, books are magic.
Well, you've got that lineal space between learning what's in the book and your own thoughts, right there in front of you, and that's where the magic happens.
Yeah, and if you think back, like historically, right, the grimoire tradition, the little published, some of the earliest published books that were really popular were like little books of magic, and they were about this sort of size. So there's a long tradition of having that. And then we go back to that thing which you started with on page 5 of Folktales, Fairies and Spirits, right? Don't hold what I say up as more important than.
Oh yeah, it's right through all of it, and which is once again the confusion of humanity. Let's just straighten everybody out today. Halo. Okay. No, but I will read a book written by anyone, and it doesn't have to be a Moon book author, but where the person is allowing free thought, where they're saying, this is how I do it. And I have seen reviews that are like, well, they don't even know what they're doing. They're not being definite about it. And I just, yes, this is this is why I did give up tarot reading, because I put in my rules, I respected everyone. But if they said, what do you mean I can change my life? So it's like free. It's like, if you don't stand there and say, this is the way it is, and don't argue with me, and that you don't know what you're talking about. However, to me, this goes back to the time where immigrants from all over the world, say in New York, would have a sick baby in a building and all work together to make it better. Throwing in all of their ideas, doing whatever worked. This is about working in a practical world, getting your hands dirty, scooping up that bog dirt, so whatever. So yes, these books that I love being small, because they say you need this, you need this, you need this. They're like those magazines from when you were a kid, right? They have the story. Then they have the activity. They have a place for you to. They're lovely. I think.
And so the first book that I put out with Moon Books, I would periodically get people ask me, when are you writing a sequel? And I'm like, well, the sequel is the work that you choose to do with this. So for me as a teacher, and that's what I'm doing in my books, I'm standing as a teacher. I'm saying I'm drawing on, and I started young, so I'm drawing on 30 years of experience, of conscious experience, and a lot of that was actually, it's been a lot of my life. Drawing on that experience, I can tell you what has worked for me. Here are the keys that I have found useful. Here are the tools that I have found useful. And those tools and those keys, when you use them, they will put you in relationship with whatever it is that you're doing. So I can give you the tools that have worked for me and have worked for my students and people that I know for learning stories. And then I'll give those to you. And then what you do with that opens the doors for you. And then your relationship with story is going to be different to mine. Your style is going to be different to mine. And you find that out by doing it.
Because you have a different life. Yeah, you have a
Yeah.
different life. You have different experiences. You have different needs. And I think that different is what people are having confusion about.
Yeah.
Like, no, this one way to do all. Like, I don't. Why are you gathering all this information if you're not doing something practical with it? What is the point? You know, I don't care who you are. If you tell me something I need to hear, and as quickly as possible, because, you know, I've got cookies baking.
Oh yeah, cookies.
If I have cookies baking, it's not going to get out of my head or my nose. Then just tell me, and then we'll make it work. And the practicality of being able to find this stuff in the kitchen cupboard. This is real people magic. This is not, and that's where it is. And so I just want to make that point clear while I have the chance, that there is a specific reason why I go pagan portals and moon books. And that doesn't mean, I mean, if I buy one with lots of different authors, if I'm not into crystals, I don't have to look up the crystal section. If I'm not into, you know, there's enough. And I mean, that one, the one I really, really like is Weathering the Storm, that came out during COVID, because it works with so many different things. And there was enough, you know, in its introduction to the way different authors write and things like that. So any of the group things. So no, it is definitely a good thing. And this book is definitely a great look into storytelling and made me see it in different ways.
Sorry, my partner's always telling me to like
no,
it's
important. It's important. I took the, but you have yours just in case, because sometimes people don't have their books. So, but you have yours. So, you didn't.
And as far as I know, the image on the cover was not AI generated. So if that's something that matters to people, it matters to me. Moonbooks gives us the option to say, look, we don't want AI generated images on the covers. And so that was, I believe, that was done.
It looks, I don't know that one in hard copy, but it looks like it's almost real with like some
yeah. It's like retouched and layered and things.
Yeah.
But I love that it makes me think of the bard striding through the forest and being inspired by the birds. But yeah, anyway, and Little Red Riding Hood a little bit, which is one of my favorite traditional kids stories.
Little Red Riding Hood is everything. So there's so much to that, and there's so much to that story.
In my goblin circus, Little Red Riding Hood learnt shapeshifting from her grandmother. So
I can see that in that story. I also think it's a wake-up call for parents. If your child is going to go off to the forest, maybe just put down the work and go with them. Go with them and walk in the forest and see what you might find that changes you there. So
be aware of their developmental age. Like, some children can walk down the path and not stray, and other children can't. No.
Obviously, we are not those children, because we can't even walk down a path in conversation.
No, I was always climbing in the hedges looking for fairies. So
no, I for the longest time, like, just need a forest, because that's where all the stories take place, and that's, you know. And then I realized, well, we can make one up in our head, Vicky, and do that. But I plan to utilize this book, so you know that there is, in some of the things, I need more things. In some of the things I would like to do, and I think people should do that. Just I think it would help with conversations all over the place, and maybe bring some togetherness, as you said. Universe, one verse. songs. So stories. Okay. Now all of this, what is Halo up to next? What is their best ways to get a hold of your wonderful information?
So you can find all of my books and my courses and music and all sorts of things in my net, which is the website haloquin.net. I chose the .net instead of the .com because I liked that imagery. So haloquin.net, one N. I'm going to be speaking at a couple of things over the autumn. So there's a divination summit in October, and I'm going to be teaching a workshop on divination through stories. So come and have a go. Even if you don't know stories and don't tell stories, that'll be quite a fun thing that you can have to play with. And I'll be talking about the Fair and Cunning Folk in November. That will be in person, but I think it's going to be recorded in Cardiff. In online spaces, which will probably suit more people, you can find my videos, so the Fairy Doctor videos and storytelling videos. It's not quite the same as in person, but there's some fun little bits, and I talk about the magic in the stories at the end of them. So again, that's on my YouTube channel, which is at Halo Quin. And I also have a free online community, which I've just had to move to Discord because the forum that I was using, new internet laws, meant I've had to move back onto Discord. And it's much more organized than it sounds from the title.
Oh, so yes, I know. I always they seem like, do I want to get involved? But no, it is I found it very easy to use and straightforward. Yeah. Go ahead.
So you can join me there. That's the Enchanted Academy. So it's kind of got three circles to it. The Enchanted Academy, there's the free community, which everyone is welcome in, and then there's the library, which contains self-study courses and masterclasses in using your voice in magic, in shape-shifting for witches, in intuitive tarot reading. There's all sorts of things. There's, as I said, self-study courses in there as well. So that's a paid tier. And then I'm also offering the Enchanters Circle, so a circle for enchanters, and in there we have live courses running throughout the year. That also contains access to some clubs that I'm running. So we're working with the Goddess Babylon, which is the next book I've got coming out, doing ritual in there. And I have just, because as I said, it was my birthday and I want to celebrate like a hobbit, so I decided that I was going to set it up so that there are 10 spaces at a special for birthday rate. So you can find all of that information on my website, haloquin.net, and look for the button for the Enchanted Academy, or T for short, because T is magic. And that orange and red logo, you'll see it.
Right, which reminds me, I do want to mention that Halo has a lovely quote in there about seeing your mug of your favorite brew as a cauldron, and and I'm like, oh my gosh, how many of us stare into our morning coffee and do that same thing. So now I'm thinking of all the mugs as cauldrons, and it's really making me happy to do that. So thank you for that little bit of happiness, Halo. I think I should mention, I don't think I did, that Halo is in Wales, right?
Yes, you might hear in my accent, I'm English, but I've lived in Wales for 20 years. And if you're not from the island, then you may not know that those two are considered to be different spaces, particularly for historical reasons. But yeah, it's complex and beautiful, and so this is why I wrote my Gods and Goddesses of Wales, was in order to honour some of the stories and some of the land here that has welcomed me. So yeah, I live in wild, wet, windy West Wales that has been surprisingly sunny today. So if you're ever up this way at the National Library, drop me a message on Instagram or something, and if I'm about and not off on my adventures or in a field with some druids or whatever,
I want to go now. I have cookies first. Cookies first. So I think yes, I think that we might have had a little more lagging issues today. That's why the jumping in and we're not hearing the things at the same time. So I want to apologize for if I spoke over you at any time. It got a little confusing there. So
it's probably my internet being on the coast.
well,
In,
we're lucky.
well,
It's magic that we can even speak to each other.
I love it, and it's been such a delight. I've been watching the chat come through, so thank you, Robin, Heidi, and everyone that's commented. Dave, with your cookies, are they chocolate chip?
I think he didn't get any chocolate chips this week. That apparently was my fault. So I'm thinking they're going to be raisin oatmeal. This is what I'm thinking.
That's actually my favorite. I know that's very
I haven't
divisive.
had a visual certainty, but yes, when we talk about things in our lives that just come together and they work, having a husband that bakes cookies it's magical. Okay, not some days, but I'm like, I don't want to eat cookies. Like, please take away your cookies. And but then he became Santa, so it's a crazy world.
Yeah.
What you can.
So I'd love to hear if you're going to be telling stories. You mentioned being Mrs. Santa, maybe.
Yes, I think, that has inspired me because, like, you do read the stories, but they're mostly all copyrighted because you have to sort of hold the book with the pictures for the kids. And then I'm thinking, yeah, but then I can have older people come up, research for some older people's stories, maybe for the older folks in the senior homes with a little Crimson Craft hidden in there for them because they always love the risque. And things like
little
that.
Old ladies are the dirtiest.
Yeah, no, it has really inspired me to up this game. And also, I want to do some like recycle crafts and stuff. I want to do many things, but like do videos of Mrs. Claus to encourage kids that you don't always need and I'm just thinking right now I want to do a dollhouse out of cardboard with stuff that they have at home and don't have to go to Michael's for. So it's all wrapping in, but she just made appearance last year because Mr. Claus needed an escort and she was the obvious choice. And so we're leading into it, but it's just wild that I have I think ultimately that was my perfect job that I wanted for all those years. It's cooking, it's milk, it's family, it's fireplaces, it's stories. It's just a cozy world. And
it's Fika.
Yeah. Thank you, Robin. So it's Fika. Yeah, exactly. I just want to live with stories and hot drinks and so thank you so much, Halo. I'm not sure where we went in this conversation or where we ended up, and it was lovely and it was wonderful. And I got to get my Moonbook's passion out there. So, that's great to do. Thank you so much for coming. Thank you so much for this book because, like I said, it's inspired me and with its practical details. And we need to get together again. Well, when is the Babylon?
Babylon will be due out at some point, probably towards the end of next year, middle to the end of next year.
Okay.
So I'm very excited to share. She's a modern goddess with ancient roots that some people a number of people have heard of, but don't know much about her. And a lot of people go, "Oh, who's that?" And yes, she's rocking. She is a goddess of liberation, lust, love, life, limits, mortality, earth, transformation.
Well, just from the name Babylon, you've got to, we have those, and that's right up your your pathway, right? It's right up your path. So
if you want to find out about her, you can read about a little snippet about her at the end of Crimson Craft, which is out and is available in all good bookstores and the Wicked ones too.
And which is another, and even I thought it was this one. This is the one I have, Gods and Goddesses of Wales, that you can't see. They all sort of hold that straight to the point Halo brand, I think, which I love. So
I'm in the process of I'm actually in the process of editing some of the mistakes that I made in the Welsh, because the person who was going to do the proofreading of the Welsh for me couldn't manage it at the time. So when I submitted it, there's a couple of mistakes in the Welsh that I'm working on editing and getting checked. So there's going to be a new, not a new edition, but the next round of printing of those will have some slight edits in it.
But
so
if you're anything like me, you never notice that. I think if you're Welsh, it would make a difference.
Yeah. And I'll be putting a post up with some information on these are the things I got wrong and I am terrible. But yeah,
you're not terrible. You're learning.
I'm learning. I am, and that is a beautiful book. And again, it's designed as introductions. My goal with that was to honor the stories, honor the spirits of the land, the stories of this land, to share them in a way that was readable. From an English storyteller's perspective, and then to just give people enough to introduce them to the deities and to the beings in those stories that you wanted to be introduced to, so that you could then go from there. Again,
with once
key.
again the resources, so that you can go as far as you want. And Moon Books is pretty much has a book this size for almost each of these deities and things now, so you can just look down the collection over. Well, I mean, this is what I do. I have a day where the sun has really made an impact on me, and then I'm like, okay, so we're gonna go with sun magic now. What do we got? And so it's always been, there is something there for everything that you may question, and they keep coming up with more. So a year goes by very quickly. Halo. I would love to talk to you about the new book at the end of the year. Oh, and then I will probably have had some experience with the whole Mrs. Claus storytelling thing too to share.
Yes, and you can tell me how it went.
Yeah, so it'll be perfect. Yeah. Okay. We'll work something out then. Okay. Yeah. We covered new books coming up. Where you can just go. I mean, it's a lovely website. And just go to Halo. Just put in Halo Quin and it will take you to halo.net. It's that simple, and it has everything very well.
Thank you. And come and join the community and join the conversation, meet other people who are excited about storytelling magic and fairies and
all the good stuff.
All the good stuff. Love to have you there. Love to have you.
Oh, you are so nice. You're just wonderful. Hello, just lovely. Okay, so I'm going to have to let you go. The only thing I have to look for now are cookies, which I should not be eating.
I'm envious. I'm going to get some cookies.
You take care, and we will talk at the end of the year. Okay, at the beginning, another one. So, bye-bye.
Thank
you. Okay, wonderful time with Halo. Until next time, thanks for listening for everyone, and may your coffee be hot and your stories sweet. You take care.